Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of your Chia blockchain tutorial. This video is going to be all about plotting. So there's kind of a two-step process. So plotting is when you create plots, which will then be used to farm. Plotting is computationally expensive, but you only have to do it once for each plot. So once you've created all the plots you need, you can farm them forever. A plot takes up a certain amount of space, and I'll show you that here soon. And it takes a certain amount of time to create a plot. So a lot of people will basically do their best to create the fastest plots, optimizing their computer hardware. And then the other part is getting as much storage as possible so that they can have a lot of plots farming and have a higher chance of winning Chia or getting a higher consistent payout through a pool. So let's take a look at plotting. We're going to use the GUI, but all this can be done from the CLI or through the terminal as well. I think getting started with the graphical user interface is the easiest, and you go to the Plots tab and then add a plot. Now there's a bunch of options in here, and we're going to go through all of these. The first one is to choose a plotter, and when you do this, you'll see that there are currently 3 options here. Chia Proof of Space is the original. This is what people used when Chia first started, but it wasn't long until people from the community took on the challenge of creating a plot file, and they created their own plotting software, MadMax and BladeBit. Now I have heard great things about BladeBit, but it does require a significant amount of RAM, so it's not supported for me, and probably won't be for you unless you have a server with a ton of RAM. So what I would recommend is the MadMax plotter, which actually allows you to do things serially rather than in parallel, which can keep things pretty simple, and it's very fast. I started with the default plotter, and I would just do many in parallel, all from the terminal, but it was kind of hard to organize and keep things working properly, and if it crashed, I had to set it all back up again. So I've just grown to prefer doing one plot at a time, which you can do easily with MadMax Plotter. We will also be taking a look at how to do this from the terminal later on as well. Not in this video, but probably the next video. Next up, choose a plot size. So there's a few options here, and the size is measured in this K value. So K32 is probably what I would recommend. Some people will do 33 or 34. You don't want to do 25 unless you're just doing it for testing purposes, but this is not actually going to be a valid plot for winning Chia. So you'll want to do at least K32. As for the size, you can convert GIB to GB to get a better understanding if you're more familiar with gigabyte. So you don't have to worry about this too much. Just understand that when it says gigabyte or GIB, it's actually a little bit bigger than 101 gigabytes. It's actually 108 gigabytes. And this has to do with whether or not you're using base 2 or base 10. So for example, if you convert 1024 GIB to TIB, which is the tebibytes, that's going to be 1. Comparing this to 1000 gigabytes to terabytes, it's 1. So most people are comfortable working in multiples of 10, but in computing, it's often a base 2. So we're kind of getting on a rabbit trail with that. Just be aware of those differences. Now the next thing you need to be aware of is temporary space. As you are creating the plot file, not only do you have the final destination space, but you need temporary space while the plot is being created. Now, as the plot is being created, it's going to create some temporary files, which is actually larger than that final plot size. So be aware that the temporary space is actually more than the final amount of space used. So these temporary files is just going to create a bunch of them. So when you choose a temporary directory, I recommend picking a location that you could easily clear out if something crashed and you don't want to have to go find all these temporary files. So what we will do is we will just say browse, and we'll just put everything in the desktop, and we'll just create this temp directory and hit open. So that's where all of our temporary files are going to go. We'll just go with one plot for right now, and then select a final directory. This is where the final plot is going to go, and for this we will just choose the desktop. So we'll hit open, and that looks good. Now joining a pool is optional. I would highly recommend joining a pool. Even if you don't want to use a pool, you can still use the pooling protocol and just self-pool. So that is what I would recommend, and then if you ever want to switch to a pool, you can. So let's just go through how this works. You can add a new plot NFT. Now when you create a plot NFT, you have the option to self-pool. You can always change to a pool later, or you can connect to a pool and you will just need to paste in a URL given to you by the pool. So I'll talk about that in a second. Just want to mention real quick that for the fee, right now a fee is not required. However, this is subject to change as the network gets more saturated. This is a transaction on the blockchain, so you will want to make sure that transaction goes through. But for now, I will just leave that blank. As for which pool, you can find a list at miningpoolstats.stream/Chia, and I recommend going with an OP pool. So that means official protocol. So the ones without OP are using an unofficial client and are not recommended going forward. So a few things you might want to know: the pool fee is the percentage that the pool takes out of your earnings. So that is one downside of using a pool. They also have a minimum payment, so how much Chia you have to collect before getting a payout, the total number of miners, or in this case farmers, and then the total estimated capacity for all of those farmers. So the higher this capacity, the more frequent block wins, which means the pool most likely has more consistent luck. So you might get a URL that looks something like this. The important thing to know is that you want to make sure you don't leave a / on at the end, and then verify that that is a legit pool URL. Obviously, this is not one, so you're not going to want to use that URL. You want to get that from the pool's website. So grab that URL or go with self-pooling, and then go ahead and hit create. And you can see it is now pending that plotting, and you should be able to head over to the pooling tab to see that plot NFT. And you see it's creating plot NFT and joining the pool. Now, just to be extra clear and make sure everybody's on the same page when it comes to the plot NFT, because it can be a little bit confusing, you only need to create one plot NFT. And this is a token that you can think of it as having ownership of all of your plots, and you can move it from pool to pool so you're not tied to a specific pool. I just have multiple plot NFTs just from experimenting. You will most likely only need one unless for some reason you wanted to join multiple pools. The important thing to know is that you create the plot to that plot NFT, so you can't move that plot to a different plot NFT. That's why I recommend just having one plot NFT so you don't have your plots split up across multiple. Once this is done, it should automatically start farming from it, but if you ever have issues or if you're moving plots around, you can add a plot directory here. And again, once this plot is done, you should be able to see it from the farming tab as well as from the pooling tab. Hopefully that gave you a quick intro on creating plots. Stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to get a little bit deeper on some of the things around Chia, including the CLI. So that'll be pretty exciting. I'll see you in the next one.